In this episode, we're talking all things Winter Classic, New Year's resolutions for a couple of teams, talk about some young guys on the Red Wings and some young guys on the New Jersey Devils in our Team ISO this week, and deep dive into why their team's defense is struggling so bad. Hit the music. Welcome to Slam Sports Hockey. I'm your host, Peter Bojaranov, and the mic is always on. It's your one-stop weekly shop for expert analysis on every single team. We are a fun hockey community, bringing everyone together. You can find me on Twitter now at pbojaranov, Bojarinov. V as in Victor, formerly at Russia98. You can find the full show at Jablam Sports. That's Jablam Sports. If you have any questions or comments, please tweet us. Use the hashtag at Jablam Sports. Please subscribe to us if you haven't done so yet, and click on those 3 dots in your podcasting app. Share our show with 3 hockey fans you know. Thank you, everyone. Remember, check out our website, www.jablamsports.com, for our podcasts and even game notes for each episode. You'll get all the links to everything we mentioned on this show, including guests. We've even got articles this year and much more content weekly. For our podcasts, click on podcasts on our website and then hockey on this show specifically, right on our website. For this week's Trending Now, of course, it's the new year, so let's talk a little New Year's stuff as well. On the panel are Tony Abbott. He is covering the Minnesota Wild at 10K Rinks. You can get him on the tweets. Oh, hi, Tony. What a nice name there, Tony.
It's very nice. I like to say oh hi to everyone I meet, so oh hi, Peter.
Oh, hi, Tony. All right, welcome to the show. Also back on the show is Evan Lobsinger. He's the co-host of the Winged Wheel podcast. You can find him on Twitter at HockeyTownEvan. Welcome back, Evan.
How's it going, gentlemen?
It's cold. Is it cold? Was it cold for you? We're going to talk about this, but was it cold for you, Tony, the other day at Target Field?
Well, me personally, for the most part, no, because I was in a press box. Okay. But, I did get out there into the concourse and met some friends who are hanging out around the foul pole in left field. And, yes, I can confirm, very cold, mitten-penetrating cold. It was everything it was hyped to be in terms of how chilly it was. Mm-hmm. And credit to pretty much everyone there, because in a game that was 6-2 going into the third period, when it was well into the minuses, people stayed for the whole time, and that's really not something that you would have expected to see. But the Minnesotans must have wanted to come out and show off how well they can handle cold weather, and they did that.
Yeah, the troopers, they are the people working there, the fans in attendance. You go there for the atmosphere. I'm actually wearing a Dylan Larkin, I think it's the Centennial Classic jersey, and I'm wearing the jersey for Evan, but as well, I just reminded this is the outdoor jersey that they're wearing at the Big House. So, I remember I was at the outdoor game that they had in Hamilton, freezing my ass off. So it is a chilly one, and troopers, all of them.
Speaking on behalf of Minnesota, I can say I'm legally required to say, in fact, it was colder in Minnesota than it was at the Big House.
Oh,
we always have to remind people how cold it is.
Yes,
I was at the outdoor game at the big house, and I remember sitting there and watching the snow sort of accumulate on my legs and my body as the game was progressing. It was cold, windy, miserable, but it was a fun experience. So I can somewhat relate to that Minnesota game the other day.
Oh, so we'll talk even more about that. What I wanted also to throw at you guys, I'm throwing it at you. New Year's, subdued party for everyone, pretty much. Especially maybe even more so than last year. But did you guys enjoy your New Year's? How was your New Year's, Evan?
Well, I mean, the previous year we did a COVID New Year's on Zoom with everyone. So the fact that we were able to have 6 of us get together this year, it's not a party by any means, but it's definitely an incremental improvement over last year. So, it's progress, not perfection right now. But it was good. It was quite good.
That's good. Good to hear.
Ended up staying inside working on New Year's Eve, which, no big deal. It was going to be low key anyway. Wife was out of town, stuff like that. But on New Year's Day, I got to go to a hockey game, so can't complain.
Yeah, I was surprised in terms of throwing that at you, quickly again at you. I was surprised because in Canada, we're used to 7 p.m. The Leafs, usually Saturday night hockey, right? So in Canada, we had maybe overshadowing such a great Winter Classic game was the Leafs versus Senators. And everybody's watching that game instead of paying attention to the Winter Classic game, which is usually a midday event on New Year's Day. So it baffles me that the NHL and scheduling put it later and at the same time as in a big event for Canadians who love hockey so much.
Yeah, it is a little surprising that they would do that, right? Because that's their answer to the bowl games, right? To the Super Bowl, and you're already competing with that on New Year's Day. So to make your marquee event have to compete even harder with, your own league, that seems like shooting yourself in the foot. But, when you look at the overall track record of NHL decisions, it's not entirely surprising.
Yeah, we were talking about that on our most recent episode, and the only theory that I had on it was, I mean, this sounds like the biggest cliche, but the NHL is a gate-driven revenue league. So to the NHL, they probably don't care that there's 7 games going on at the same time. They've got a stadium with 38,000 people sold out, and those tickets aren't the usual price. They cost a premium. So in the NHL's point of view, they probably don't care because they got so much more ticket revenue rather than viewership.
Yeah. And all the thirsty, hungry Canadians who actually kind of want to watch that were either flipping back and forth or maybe like myself recorded it and then watched it later. So there you have it. For your teams, Evan, what would be a New Year's resolution for the Red Wings?
Red Wings are having a funny season right now. We expected Moritz Seider to come in, make a big jump, and he's been nothing but spectacular. Same thing with Lucas Raymond. We weren't even sure if he'd make the team. He does, and by my biased vote, he's the Calder favorite right now. The Red Wings right now are kind of falling off a cliff and at a very fast pace. The power play is terrible. The penalty kill is terrible. So in terms of a New Year's resolution, it would be nice to see some life again in the power play and the penalty kill. But I think we need to sort of temper our expectations because this is a bottom 10 team in the league. I think we just got a little bit excited with the explosion of some of our youth this year.
We'll get to talking a little bit more about the youth. Tony, the Wild, what would be their New Year's resolution, even though they are playing pretty well so far this year?
I think their resolution has to be to prove that they're for real, right? Because, they had a very exciting team last year led by Kirill Kaprizov. Kevin Fiala was scoring. Joel Eriksson Ek was scoring. And then you get to the playoffs, and it's really, they ran into a wall in Vegas, right? Mm-hmm. And Vegas is a powerhouse team. They're going to probably be even better this year once Jack Eichel gets back on the ice and is healthy. And, Minnesota really didn't have, they went 7 games, but they didn't really have much business going 7 games. They got outplayed to a pretty significant degree by Vegas. Again, like they're one of the big dogs in the West. Not entirely surprising, but Cam Talbot kind of stood on his head for 6 games and really kept Minnesota in it when they didn't really have much business being there. This year, it's got to be to find a way to prove that you deserve to be in that conversation with the Vegases, with the Colorados. I don't know if that is getting a big trade. I don't know if that is bringing up players, top prospects like Marco Rossi and Matt Boldy to see if they can get some of that Moritz Seider, Lucas Raymond magic that you've got going on in Detroit. But like, it's got to be to find a way to show that you're not those wild teams where it's like you can look at the playoff schedule and be like, okay, they're probably out first round, second tops.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I still think they're a team that is very highly underrated. So the sky is still the limit, I think, for them, but I think they're going to start proving people wrong in the next year or two at least. Speaking about the Winter Classic at Target Field, State of Hockey finally getting an outdoor game there. When I was watching the actual program, it seemed very country music themed. Am I just like, what? Minnesotans are very country music? I did not know this. Are they?
I think there are definitely like parts of Minnesota that are. I think that country music, like there is a good subset of fans who are into country music. I mean, it's not Nashville, right? Like, I don't know why it was so heavily focused on country music, but there is definitely that aspect to it. I don't know how many. I'm not as in touch to local music as maybe I should be. But so I don't know if there is like a country music scene. I know in like the cities, it's more of a punk rock scene. Historically, you had the Replacements, you had Husker Du coming up there. So like there is that, but I don't know how many punk rockers are going to the Winter Classic game, so maybe that was part of the decision. Maybe I don't know why it was so country music themed, but there is that element of music fandom up here.
Mm-hmm. About the game itself, of course, it was one of the highest scoring Winter Classic games of all time versus the Blues. A possible preview of a Western Conference final matchup? Maybe. But again, poor defensive coverage. I don't know. Is that maybe correlation to maybe the team's just not playing games, I guess, in the last week?
I think that's some of it, but I think the real big thing is that they were missing Jonas Brodin. He was out on COVID protocols. And they're missing Jared Spurgeon, who's dealing with I think at this point you can call it nagging lower body injury. It happened earlier in the year. He missed 8 games, and then he comes back, and then he's and then he re-aggravates it. Now he's out for probably another week or two. Right now, I guess we don't know for sure, but that's the guess, I think. And without those two guys, you're down to only a couple of players who can move the puck. Matt Dumba and Kalen Addison, who's a rookie. I think he came into the Winter Classic. I don't even think he has 10 NHL games under his belt yet. Mm-hmm. And then, you've got guys like Dmitry Kulikov, John Merrill, good defensive defensemen, even like Alex Goligoski. Not really the guys that you want to be the primary puck carrier on your defensive pairing. And when you can't carry the puck, you can't leave your zone. If you can't leave your zone, you're going to get a lot of shots again. So I think that's really the problem, is that they're missing those two big guys on defense.
Yeah, that would be a big loss, especially Brodin. So I might throw one little thing, Winter Classic thing at you at the last, if we have time.
No worries.
With the Red Wings, next will be team isolating the Devils, and they were projected to be second last in the division, and they are. The Red Wings, pretty much the same thing, right? But they're a little bit higher. They're just might be outside of a playoff spot. What's really clicking for the Red Wings so far this season? And don't just tell me it's the youth.
Well, the youth definitely helps fill a piece of the puzzle, right? Like when you don't have, when you're a team that has a Tyler Bertuzzi and a Dylan Larkin, and that's it, like you have no depth. So teams game plan you, and those guys are shut down. When you start to inject more depth and a potential superstar like Lucas Raymond, it helps take the eyes away from other players and provide some success to them. The nice thing about having Lucas Raymond on a line with Tyler Bertuzzi and Dylan Larkin is it's allowed them to elevate their game a little bit more and play a little bit more offense. So just by addition, really, this team has become better. But when they play teams like Boston and Washington recently, you really start to see where the lack of true depth really comes out. So yeah, the Red Wings had a good start to the year, and the team's starting to look promising. And Simon Edvinsson looked really good for a handful of games at the World Juniors. The team is still a few years away from being a few years away. And it doesn't help being in the Atlantic. Like, that division is a powerhouse. Boston decides to continually defy age. So it's going to be tough for the Red Wings, but this year has been good. I know my expectations were basically, let's see the youth take a step forward, and they've covered that in spades. So the Red Wings might suck still, but it's not all doom and gloom. There's a glimmer of hope in the future.
Can I ask a Red Wings question real quick?
Sure.
So I'm really curious about this. Is this a season where, the team's doing well and it's kind of a bummer because you maybe really need that one more top prospect to really get you over the hump of the future? Or is it a thing where it's like, okay, there's that prospect base there, and now I just want to see improvement?
It's a little bit of both. The Red Wings still need some potential top six forwards. Jake Veron is injured right now still. Like he got hurt in the first 10 minutes of training camp this year. He had problems with his visa, finally got that resolved 10 minutes into training camp, shoulder done until March. So there is potential there as well. So yeah, it's basically where the Red Wings are now is the most difficult place to be, because if they don't hit on their first round picks going forward, they're going to be stuck in that purgatory spot of not being good, but not being bad enough. So, I mean, the lottery owes the Red Wings a little bit of luck. So if it's not this year, hopefully next year with Michkov and Bedard being available. So the Red Wings are in a precarious spot where I don't think they're good enough now. And I don't think their prospect base is also good enough to move them forward. It really is going to be the next 2 or 3 drafts that really sort of solidifies where this team's going and sort of what you see out of their young players over the next year or two.
All right, let's follow it up with the last one on that one. Outside, you usually look at a 3-headed dragon. So outside of Moritz Seider and Lucas Raymond, who's the third young talent people should be looking for on the Red Wings?
In the future, I would say Simon Edvinsson for sure. Mm-hmm. For those who don't really know who he is, he's 6'6" defenseman. He actually skates like the wind. He's vastly improved in his defensive end in just a few months since being drafted. He's got incredible offensive gifts. He reminds me a little bit, I hate player profiles, but he reminds me a little bit of Miro Heiskanen, who's probably better defensively in my opinion. But he fits that sort of mold where he loves to jump into the play. Joe Veleno is still a guy that a lot of Red Wings fans are rooting for. I see him as somewhere in the middle six, potentially a centerman, which would resolve a lot of issues. And then I can't forget Sebastian Cossa as well. Red Wings took him over Jesper Wallstedt this year in the draft, which was a huge surprise to a lot of pundits. He's had a great start so far in the WHL. And the Red Wings have Alex Nedeljkovic as well, who's still considered a rookie by some strange metrics of how the NHL does their Calder. So there's a lot of great pieces and a lot of very exciting pieces for Detroit. But it just takes time. And I think that's the worst thing for every sports fan.
Being of Serbian descent, I really wanted to buy a Nedeljkovic jersey after the run last year for the Canes. So hopefully if he stays long-term, I'm going to buy a Red Wings Nedeljkovic jersey.
He's been excellent so far.
Yeah, he is phenomenal. I like him. Speaking about that, my last question to you, Tony, is what do you think about those Winter Classic jerseys? Did you like them?
They're so close to being great, man. They're so close to being great. Really what it comes down to, I would have liked to have seen a comparison with or without that horizontal stripe on the top. That's maybe more of a nitpicky. What's not a nitpick? Elbow patches. What was up with the elbow patches? I've never seen elbow patches on, like, this isn't a college sweater. This is a hockey jersey. And it was just like a weird color. I was talking about it with my wife, who liked the jerseys overall, but then I pointed out the elbow patches and she's like, "Oh yeah, that is weird. They look like Band-Aids." And they do. I didn't get that. I think on the ice, especially, seeing it from further away, you're not able to zoom in and focus on every detail. They did look a lot better on the ice than they did when they were being modeled. And I think that happens that way with a lot of jerseys. But for me, it's like real close to being a great classic look. And if it just had maybe another tweak or two, it'd be perfect. But the elbow patches are so baffling to me that it just takes it down several rungs, because it's like, I don't even know why you thought you had to do that.
I think you do either the elbow patches or the stripes across the elbows, but not both.
Okay, I could see that.
I definitely applaud a team for trying something new, because the NHL is the most stale, boring, stick to what we know league. So I can at least appreciate that. But yeah, I'm with you on the elbow patches. They did not work at this iteration.
The one thing I like about jersey, the Centennial ones, the one thing I liked about it was the silver, because it's the Centennial as well.
Yeah.
In the silver part of the Leafs and Detroit Red Wings Centennial jerseys, in the silver part is every single year they won the Stanley Cup. So that's really cool. And it reminds me, which I'm surprised no NHL teams or hockey teams do this. In soccer, they have the stars of the championships in their jerseys for every time they've won a championship. So that kind of reminds me of that, and I like that. I think the Islanders once had like the lines, the 4 lines on the shoulders, and if you're a captain or assistant, you had the 4 or the 3, and then the regulars were the 2. I don't know. I'm not sure. This is season 7, episode 14. So check out the episode page for this. On the panel again, thank you guys for joining me at Hockeytown, Evan for Evan, and for Tony at Oh Hi Tony. Next up in Team ISO will be Team ISOing the New Jersey Devils. Why is the team with the greatest history of one of the best defensive teams so poor on the back end? Have you ever wanted a one-stop weekly shop for expert analysis on every single NHL team? Look no further than jablamsports.com. We've had guests from James Sapolsky, Ardo Cal, and yes, even Dennis Bernstein shows up monthly. We are a fun hockey community bringing everyone together. Find us wherever you get your podcast and type in JABLAM Sports. That's Jablam Sports. Our website is, yes, you've called it, jablamsports.com. Go download and subscribe right now. You can also find us on socials at Jablam Sports on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'm Peter Rojanov saying, puck you later. For this week's Team ISO, we are isolating the New Jersey Devils. Both back on the show are Matt Loughlin. He's the New Jersey Devils radio play-by-play man. You can find him on Twitter at MattLoug, Loug. Welcome back to the show, Matt.
Peter, thanks very much for having me, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, too. Also back on the show is Robert Aitken Jr. He's a sports writer at North Jersey and The Record Sports. You can find him on Twitter at Robert Aitken Jr. Robert, welcome back.
Happy New Year. Happy 2022 to everybody.
So before we dive deep into everything Devils, I want to continue this whole New Year's theme that we did in the Trending Now first segment. So, Matt, going to you first. What do you think is a New Year's resolution for the Devils?
That their power play continues to show some life. It's only been recent. It's a small sample, but if it can carry over, that will serve them well. And one other, aside from a general, and this is for all of us, of course, good health and lack of COVID impact, but that they find an answer to a backup goalie, because they really need to figure that out and hope that Mackenzie Blackwood can return to form, but they'll need someone to support him as well.
Robert, do you think both of those are good? Which one do you think is a better resolution, or do you have one that's better?
Actually, I was going to jump right off of what Matt said. Health has to be the number one priority for this team. Just whether it's injuries, whether it's regular illness, whether it's the COVID pandemic, which has been going on, it has ravaged this team, not just this season, but also all of last season. I think I tweeted out right around the time when the league was shutting down, the three main cogs you want to think of with this team: Mackenzie Blackwood in net, Nico Hischier, and Jack Hughes. Out of 86 games, I think the three of them together had played 30 games. Mm-hmm. So it's a matter of getting these guys consistently on the ice, getting that connection with one another. That's how they're going to be able to show their success.
Episode 2 of Season 7, which is where we are in, Eastern Conference preview for Jablam Sports. The consensus was the Devils in that division preview. The consensus was the Devils would finish second last in the Metro. That's pretty much where they are right now. Matt, I asked you, and we put it on the website, you had them just outside of a playoff spot. Do you feel they can still turn around and get into maybe just itching out or maybe looking for that playoff spot?
Well, they certainly have put themselves in a difficult position to do that, but I still think that there is hope. I think that what anyone around the Devils would have liked, completely optimistic, rosy-eyed, cockeyed optimist would say playoff, but at the beginning of the year. But I really thought that just challenge for a spot, maybe not come down to the last day, but be in a position where when the regular season came to an end, the fans could leave the building and say, aha, the promise of the last few years is starting to show, and we can see that they've turned the corner. And while there are more positions that need to be filled and holes that need to be patched, the fact of the matter is that the Hischier-Hughes combination down the middle is going to work, and some of the other younger stars would show some of their abilities. There's still time for that to happen. Obviously, they got off to a good start. They stumbled miserably, recently ending their long losing streak and going on a bit of a winning run. We'll see where that takes us after the first three. So I think there's still a chance to do that. Get into a playoff spot, that's a long shot. I think outside, but with promise, is still on the table.
New Jersey has the 5th worst goals against average this season. If you pinpoint it at certain things, the Devils have allowed the 5th highest rate of shots against, roughly 59 attempts per 60. That's at 5-on-5. No one has allowed more goals on those scoring chances than the Devils. They're 3rd worst in controlled entries against that followed by a scoring chance. So they need to have a tighter gap between opposition players, especially coming in over the blue line. How do you think they can improve on those things, Robert?
Honestly, I think shooters need to shoot sometimes, and it's a young team, and not everyone wants to be, the guy that takes a lot of shots, but sometimes you see possessions where these guys are passing around and maybe making one too many passes. You find yourself when PK Subban or Dougie Hamilton has to be the strong shot from the point. If you can't get that rebound, you can't get that second and third opportunity. You're really limiting yourself, and also because using a top defenseman towards the blue line, you're putting yourself in a position that if there's an odd man rush coming the other way, you're going to be in trouble.
Matt,
and they've given up more shorthanded goals than any other team in the league at 6, and that is a good point. I think what we've seen lately, though, is they are shooting the puck a little bit more, certainly on the power play. But Robert, your point is well taken. The pass around the perimeter is not going to get it done. They've got to put a shot on net with purpose, looking for a rebound, and then they've got to get there to do so. There's no question that the defensive end of the game has let the Devils down through the first 30-plus games of the season. There was a time when it was okay, and then it reverted to what we saw a lot last year, which were a lot of backdoor plays and breakdowns and miscommunication. There's been some change in the defense pairings. I think it's paid some dividends. There's a long way to go. And, I said, let's get some help for a backup for Mackenzie Blackwood. But Mackenzie's got to elevate his game. I'm sitting here in Boston getting ready for the game against the Bruins on Tuesday, and only Jonathan Bernier of the 6 goalies that the Devils have used this year has a save percentage above 90. And he, in all likelihood, is not back this year, and it's only at .902. It's unacceptable. So they've got to be better defensively, that is for sure.
Ty Smith, according to HockeyViz and Shayna from The Athletic, he increases the Devils' expected goal rate against by almost 8%, more than the average player on the rest of the team at 5-on-5. And he's the worst on-ice influence on the team's shot and expected goal rate against relative to his teammates. In his, I don't know if it's a sophomore slump, but why has his play been so poor so far this year, Matt?
Well, it has been certainly befuddling to the Devils and to their fans and to anyone who observed the Devils and saw Ty Smith last year. Mm-hmm. He has not lived up to what the expectations have been. I think his lack of foot speed is a problem only if he makes mistakes and gets himself out of position, because he doesn't have the foot speed to get back and make up for that. So there was a time, and it's only been slightly better lately, and such a small sample that you don't know if you can rely on it. But, he would get himself in spots where he'd pinch in or he'd make a terrible pass, and he just can't overcome that with his speed. He can do a decent job with his smarts and angle himself well, but he got away from that for whatever reason. Sophomore slump, maybe trying to do too much, who knows? I know they've been working on him to be much more consistent, but cautious is not necessarily the word, but wiser in his choices. At any rate, he's got offensive instincts, it appears, but yet he's only got the 1 goal, and he only has 3 in the last 2 years. So I think they're still trying to figure out exactly what he is, but his decision-making has not been good, or had not been good. Better the last few games. Again, everything with the Devils at this point is a small sample because of the success they had. Whether it's sustainable long-term, we'll find out. There is some hope because of it, but there's a lot of still prove it to me that needs to be done.
Jesper Bratt has been nothing short of excellent so far this year. Top 30 in scoring, 3 game-winning goals. He's been clutch when it matters as well. He's only, I think, 6 points away from his career high in points. Where has his in-game improved so much, the 5-year vet, Robert?
Just when you speak to Lindy Ruff after games, and ask him that same question, it really just seems like Jesper is able to find and make those opportunities. He's able to create opportunities for himself. And that's what you've been able to see with, like, when Jack Hughes at the very beginning of the season, when he was kind of setting the league on fire, and even his recent streak where he's been able to create points and create goals for this team. Jesper is that kind of guy. If you put the puck on his stick, he's going to give himself an opportunity to create a play, whether it's him or it's somebody else that's around. It's a natural progression in his career, and it's something that a lot of Devils fans are pretty happy about.
And Matt, I think where I am in the GTA, in the Toronto area, they kind of want to see what's going on with Andreas Johansson. He seems like he's playing pretty well this year. I think he has about 9 goals. I think a couple of guys are tied for the team lead there, 21 points. So he's also on pace for a career high as well. Why is his play improved?
Well, some of it is settling to the mean. Last year was such a disaster for him. I don't know that he's a 20-goal scorer. He hasn't scored a goal now for the Devils since the end of November, but he has been a more determined player. I won't say that he's run recently into bad puck luck. I don't think that's the case. I think that he's just not a 20-goal scorer on a regular basis, but he's better than he was last year, which was a 5-goal scorer, and he looked totally lost. So he seems to have settled down. He seems to have a little bit of a fire underneath him, but there's probably still a little bit more that he can give. But I really think it was mostly he knew he was bad last year. He knew that there was more to give, and he's taken advantage of a little bit of the opportunity. Again, the goal scoring has dried up. He's got the 9, as you mentioned, and that does tie him for the team lead. Can he get to 17? Yeah, I would hope. If he doesn't, then we got a story, right? Because it'll really be a drought that goes on way too long. But I think that he came in with too much fanfare, and everything was such a mess last year that he just never really was able to establish anything. I think he's just a little more comfortable now. And we'll see. He's got some line mates now that they might be able to do a little something with, as Lindy Ruff and then Elaine Nazardine have changed things around just a little bit. It's provided some offense, and we'll see if it can spark Andreas.
Alexander Holtz and Nolan Foote have been recalled up for the taxi squad from Utica. Holtz already has an eventful year, you could say, starting with the Devils. I think only 2 assists in 6 games. Then he looked good with the Comets, 6 goals, 11 points. And in the under 18, I know World Juniors got stopped, but he looked good and he had a great goal there before it was shut down. Could we see Holtz in the lineup soon enough, Robert?
You could, but I wouldn't bet too much on it just because of the fact that he is a young player. He still needs to develop a little bit more. And when he came up early on in the season, he was able to make some of the decisions that he needed to make, but not all of them. I think he needed to take a little bit more time going back down to Utica, get a little bit more seasoning down there. And it's not to say that he's not an absolute star in the making. It's certainly what it seems like, but that's a crowded group of forwards that you have throughout the Devils. That was he going to get enough opportunity? It's almost like when you're a young baseball player and they don't get you enough at bats, they send you back down to the minor leagues. Is the way that I look at the reason that Holtz was sent down to Utica.
Yeah, I agree with you, Robert. He is up with the team now on that taxi squad, but I think that's simply because with COVID, you want to make sure when you go on a road trip that you have enough assets that you can make a move easily. Not that Utica is far from Washington, D.C. or Boston, where the Devils went, nor Columbus, which is where they'll be at the end of this week. But the fact of the matter is I think they just wanted to make sure that they had all their ducks lined up just in case. So I don't think he'll see much action here in this go-round. The team has found a little something. They're not going to want to change the lineup. And I really do think they want him to go down and show what they believe he's got. He did that very early in the season with Utica. They didn't want to call him up, but circumstances, his goal scoring dried up, kind of dictated, let's see if we can spark something. And he really didn't show much. He was, I won't say overwhelmed, but it certainly was a big step up from the American Hockey League to the NHL for him. And he's gone back and he's been okay, but not great. I think they want him to be great, and they're going to give him a chance to be so. Maybe this is just a little bit of a carrot and stick thing. Hey, remember what it was like. You can practice a little bit with the Devils. They're not practicing today, so it's limited time. I don't know how long he'll stay here, but a little bit of a sense of like, this is where you could be, but you have to show it to us. So I think that they'll send him back ultimately to Utica. let him play most, if not all, of the rest of the season down there, barring unforeseen circumstance. And it's up to him. He'll be given every opportunity, but it won't be handed to him. He's got to move his feet a lot more. He's got to figure out how he can create some scoring chances. Look, we expect these guys to be great coming over right away at an early age, and he was a high draft choice, so expectations, of course, are elevated. But the fact of the matter is he needs to learn some things. It's nice that he's here, and it's nice that he gets a chance to settle into NHL surroundings for a little bit, but I'm not sure he'll see much action. And I think ultimately in the near term, he's back at Utica.
Robert, what do you see his potential ceiling, at least, if everything goes right for him?
I think everyone kind of sees him as a top 6 on this team. I mean, just imagine, I don't think Devils fans truly understand. I mean, they know, but I don't think they truly understand the potential of, if you're able to keep the kids together, the potential that you have with Hischier, with Hughes, with Holtz, with Foote. You could really build this team around a bunch of 20-somethings that are just ready and willing to break out. I think he has that ability. He can be that kind of top goal-scoring option. I would probably I could definitely see him as a 20-25 goal scorer per season. He seems like that he has that kind of talent. Obviously, he's young, so it's a little premature to make this kind of discussion about him. There's a lot of seasoning, and you have to know what his ceiling is still going to be. Even when I spoke to Jack Hughes in the last season about it, I don't think Jack Hughes knows the kind of player that he is. So I certainly don't expect Alexander Holtz to know the kind of player that he's going to be just yet.
Again, you can find them on Twitter at Robert Aitken Jr. for Robert, and for Matt at Matt Locke. Next week, we'll be chatting on the Team ISO Columbus Blue Jackets, why they are top 10 in defense, and why Merzlikins thinks he can score a goal. I want to thank our guests this week. New Jersey Devils talk with Matt Loughlin and Robert Aitken Jr. again. Man, they have such a bright future, but I still think they need to do a full rebuild. That's what I kind of discovered, talked to those guys. Also in our trending now, Evan Lobsinger and Tony Abbott. Well, those jerseys are looking good to some people. I don't know. I didn't think that much of the Wild jerseys, but the event looked outstanding. Red Wings with Evan, well, maybe they will, maybe they won't, but I still feel they have a bright future with some of those kids and some more kids coming right up for them. If you've enjoyed anything you've heard in this episode or don't, please tweet at me or even our guests. You can follow me on Twitter at @PBojaranov or the entire team at Jablam Sports. You can use the hashtag Jablam Sports. That's JABLAM Sports. If you want to also contact us on our website, go to jablamsports.com/contact. Also, you can find all our info for all our guests and our podcasts, for even game notes for each episode, including this one. You'll get guests' info and links to all the things we mentioned on this show. We even have weekly content articles. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify. And of course, click on the 3 dots in your podcasting app and share this episode with 3 friends you know. Please and thank you. Jablam Sports Hockey is your one-stop weekly shop for every expert analysis on every single team. We are a fun community bringing everyone together. Follow us on Facebook. Thank you, everyone. And to every one of our listeners, we're giving you a virtual hug. Stay healthy, listen, be yourself, and stay strong.